It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out. I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
All right, welcome back. Financial Crisis Talk Center time, segment 2 on a 3-part case study, word of the day analysis, and we're focusing on Nick and Sarah. Nick happens to own ABC Tool and Die, a fictitious tool and die company that's in financial distress. We're walking through their options. Now, to give you a quick summary of where we're at, ABC Tool and Die owns the land and building. It's upside down. The building's worth $800,000. The big bank is owed $1.6 million between the land and the building and the assets of ABC Tool and Die. Nick and Sarah own their own home. It's upside down on the first mortgage. The house is worth $300,000. Friendly Bank, which has the first mortgage, is owed $350,000. It's also secured to Big Bank on the $1.6 million that Big Bank is owed on the business debt. So there's what you would think of as a massive second mortgage on this house. The assets of ABC Tool and Die, because those are secured to Big Bank, those assets on liquidation are worth $420,000. That's cash and receivables of $220,000, equipment of $200,000. We have payroll taxes owed to the federal government of $250,000 and to the state of $125,000. So we have a massive payroll tax problem on top of everything else. The question for the panel is, can we save this business? It's got $1,125,000 of debt to address. To recap it, secured to Big Bank, $500,000. Payroll taxes to the feds, $250,000. $125,000 state taxes. Unsecured credit cards, $150,000, $100,000 other unsecured vendors. This is on the company alone. It's not even addressing Nick and Sarah's debt. Is it possible to save this company? I think the answer is maybe.
Jenny, I have a question with regard to the IRS and the state of Michigan debt. The penalty and the interest on the tax and whatnot, how does that really increase sort of on average? Like we always see taxes are this, and then you look at the document from the IRS, you're like, wow, how did they get that high? And it's actually shock when you think about it.
Well, of course, when you don't file and you don't pay and you don't make your estimates and you don't make your deposits, there's all sorts of penalties that the IRS attaches. And then they also start charging interest on those penalties as well. So the first thing that I usually advise businesses, a lot of them start to say to me in the first time, well, I don't have the money, so I'm not going to file the return. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. File the return because it's actually going to limit you on what your penalties and the interest are on that. Plus, it's showing some form of compliance, which is important when you're negotiating with a government entity, that you not look like a taxpayer who's just not filing and not paying and just ignoring them. If you're filing and you can't afford to make the payments, there's usually something that we can do. But in this instance, my first question would be, if you didn't have the obligation of the back debt here, can the business support itself? At the end of the month, is there enough money to make your loan payments, to pay your current taxes?
That is absolutely, and we're going to come back to that, the $64 question, because unless, we see it all the time, the question of whether you can save the business goes to, is the business worth saving? Unless you can run the business so that you bring in more cash and revenue than expense while paying your tax liabilities, you should not be in business. And that question comes, we see that all the time where companies are running and they're financing themselves by not paying their payroll tax liabilities, which is the absolute worst possible thing that you can do. Little side note on taxes. Think about the state of Michigan's tax liabilities. Think about a cash register going cha-chang. When you miss a payment, you miss an estimate, you miss anything with the state, cha-chang. Their penalties are so outrageously high that a lot of times if you have to prioritize, you pay the state before you pay the feds. It is insane, the penalties that the state treasury imposes on payroll taxes in the state of Michigan. And not only payroll taxes, you miss your sales tax. withholding tax, any payments that you owe to the state, massive, fast, rapid, big
right, and the
penalties.
point being is, when you compare those to the IRS, it's not. We're not saying it's okay not to pay your taxes. We obviously are saying the opposite. But if you just look how the feds treat you and how the state treats you for the same, in essence, failure to act, they are so juxtaposed. They're so along the spectrum that it becomes insane.
There are a lot more options in dealing with the Internal Revenue Service than you have when dealing with the Michigan Department of Treasury. So it's not that I would advise anyone not to pay their taxes, but if you come to me and say, I've got a check, I can only pay one or the other, my advice is to pay the Michigan Department of Treasury first.
Kind of think of it this way. Think of IRS as Uncle Sam, whereas when you think of the State Department of Treasury, think of the devil. Because that's the difference in terms of the state doesn't have even the laws there to allow them. The people are okay. They don't have the laws and the ability to help you, whereas the feds do. We have things that we'll talk about: offers in compromise, installment agreements. We have stated procedures at the federal level that we can pursue for people, whereas the state, they don't have those laws.
No, they do have a law.
ability.
They do have a law. They have a statute that says it's illegal to compromise tax.
Yeah, they have a law that says we can't help you. No soup for you.
But Jenny pointed out the key to this whole situation is coming in and looking at the business and seeing if it didn't have debt. Could it be an operational business on a going forward basis, or would it just create the same problem again? And if you can take a business and remove the debt, and it's profitable, and it could function in that vacuum, so to speak, then there is the possibility of saving it. But how much profit can be generated?
That's a good point.
How can the debt be restructured? If you look at this situation and say, bottom line is that even if you got rid of all the debt, you're losing $2,000 a month. Close it down.
Well, hold on.
You either have to increase sales, increase price, or decrease cost. You don't have the option of operating at continual loss.
Yeah, we're not the government.
You don't have right.
Yeah, it's not the government.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into play.
You have a debt ceiling, and it's not going to be lifted on an individual basis.
I think what we're talking about, can you take action to put yourself personally and business-wise to weather the storm? Maybe you're at an unreasonable trough. You're too low right now, but you're not going to go from the rock bottom, absolutely not, to 200%, 300% increase in net profits over a year. But can you put yourself and position yourself to weather the storm and increase and have that line go up on an annual basis?
And you don't have when you're at this point where you've got these kind of payroll tax liabilities, you don't have a lot of time to create that buffer. So you have to make hard, cold, quick decisions. But you got to analyze it. We'll be back after the break.
I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't run or exercise. I couldn't work.
Dr. Lewis Radin believes that pain shouldn't have to wait. His Spine Specialist of Michigan is a comprehensive center dedicated to helping you manage pain now. Expect the latest techniques and personalized care. Why suffer another minute?
He's the best. I tell people that he's the one that saved my life.
Make your appointment with Dr. Radin. Call 248-792-9496.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Do you have tax problems, unfiled returns? Facing levies on wages in your property? You need an expert, not a cartoon character or salesman. Thav Gross is your solution.
You need to look at the big picture. That's what we do. We develop a plan that's right for you.
I had major tax problems. I didn't know what to do.
You need to address the problem now. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
All right, welcome back. All right, we're working through ABC Tool and Die, Nick and Sarah's problems, and so we're analyzing what the options are. I think one of the first things we do in this analysis is we have to prioritize the secured claims so we know who comes first from the standpoint of if we liquidate the company. All right, so here's what we've got. On the land and building, Big Bank is first on their claim. The building is worth $800,000. Big Bank is owed $1.1 on their first mortgage, and they're also owed $500,000 on the loan to ABC Tool. So Big Bank has a $1.6 million claim against that $800,000 building right now. So obviously Big Bank's number one. On ABC Assets, Big Bank still has their $1.6 million lien because they're cross-collateralized between the building and the business loan. IRS has filed a lien. They're owed $250,000. The state of Michigan has filed a lien. They're owed $125,000. Now, who comes first? It's who records their lien first has the priority. In this case, the Big Bank had their liens in place before Nick stopped paying the payroll taxes. So at this point, IRS is second with a $250,000 lien, and the state of Michigan is third at $125,000.
So to simplify, Big Bank is the first secured creditor over everybody in this fact situation. Big Bank is who you need to deal with first
for the business. On Nick and Sarah's house, which is worth $300,000, first mortgage is to Friendly Bank for $350,000. So First Friendly is fully secured, or is not fully secured. Big Bank's second mortgage of $1.6 million really doesn't have any clout because there's no equity to cover that $1.6 million out of the house. Now, things we have to consider. If we settle this debt, let's say the credit card debt, there's a concept called cancellation of indebtedness that can trigger income. It's what happens is, and you hear about it with credit cards, the credit card company will issue you a 1099-C, which is, we call it sometimes COD, cancellation of debt, and it's considered income unless you fit within the exception. There are 3 exceptions, and Brian knows them off the top of his hand, and we'll see if he's capable of answering that while he's texting at the same time.
Not texting. I was doing some research.
Oh, okay.
The question is...
I knew you were doing research.
Wait, are you talking about COD at the Inc. level or at the LLC level?
Individual level. I want the 3. There are the 3 exceptions to cancellation of indebtedness income.
Okay. If you file a bankruptcy, it is not a taxable event. Period. Whether you're solvent or insolvent, you're presumed to be insolvent in a bankruptcy. Therefore, there's no taxable event. Number two, if you are insolvent, both before and after the debt is canceled, you will not have a taxable event.
Number 3.
The third one is if it's your primary mortgage and it's your house, and the money that's forgiven relating to a house or a mortgage debt is either used for the purpose of purchasing or improving the house, then the money get forgiven with regard to that mortgage through the end of this year right now under the Mortgage Forgiveness Act of 2007, which has been extended till the end of to December 31, 2013. If that debt is forgiven, it is not a taxable event.
I wonder if that's going to get extended. We'll have to see. They never talk about it until you get to the very end of the year. My guess is it will be extended, but you won't hear about it until
they'd have to be open. They would have to be open to talk about
it. Yeah, the government is. Well, by the time this show at least airs on TV, let's hope the government's open. That's always a big question. And for Nick and Sarah, they are so far insolvent right now, between 1.6 to Big Bank against their assets, that they don't have to worry about cancellation of indebtedness income in this mode because they're going to fit within the insolvency test anyway. But the reason why I threw it onto the subject matter is it's a critical aspect that has to be looked at and examined when you're laying out someone's options as to what you can do. You don't want to all of a sudden go down road A, and at the end of the road you find out you've created a tax liability that you could have avoided.
So why would Big Bank want to even deal with you? You're retained by ABC. Big Bank is the one you got to deal with first. Why is it how do you convince them that it's in their best interest to deal with us?
What I would say to Big Bank is, listen, so far we haven't missed a payment. We're making the interest payments. We're doing what you're requesting us to do. We realize we have a payroll tax problem to address. But if you liquidate us, you're not going to be made whole. You're owed $1.6 million. You'll get $800,000 less selling costs on the building. You might get $100,000 for the equipment. Realistically, they're not going to be able to get to the cash and receivables because when we wind down this company, unless Big Bank jumps all over us so fast that we can't say boo, we'll manage a way of taking care and getting that cash and receivables out of the company and into paying priority tax debt to avoid Nick and Sarah's Nick's personal liability on the payroll taxes before it winds down. So realistically,
that's a really important thing that you just said. Avoiding Nick's personal liability on those taxes. If you're going to go that route, if you can take the money out, you as the taxpayer can choose how you want that money applied as long as you're making the voluntary payment. So when you send the money into the IRS, you can say apply it to the trust fund aspect.
But you don't just send it in yourself. You go to Jenny, who knows exactly what to do, and send it in so it gets applied on the trust fund portion. Right, Jenny?
That's correct.
Okay. So but let's stay on track. So the banks only, David, your question to me is, how do I negotiate with Big Bank? Well, realistically, I'm going to say to Big Bank, if you shut us down, you're only going to see on your $1.6 million probably around $800,000. There's no reason not to work with us. Work with us. Maybe we'll get you paid. If I can solve this tax problem, we can make some business decisions so that we start operating more profitably. You'll get paid. If you want to cut us down in 6 months, it's not going to make a difference. The land and building's still going to have the same value it has today.
How is the bank hurt if you are current and you continue to be current under the arrangements with the bank?
They're not hurt.
So, Jenny, when you approach the taxing authorities, what do you got to deal with them as far as that issue of being current?
Well, the first thing is they don't look at it from a common sense rationale.
You're kidding me.
No,
the government has no common sense. What a shock!
And if you're not current, there's nothing that they can do to help you.
All right, so you got to be current. Same thing.
All right, we're going to come back to the break. I want to ask you that, Jenny. What do we say to them in order to get some kind of payment arrangement? What do we do about those taxes? We'll be back after the break.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances, and contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Double Action, shooting center and gun shop. For the largest selection of guns, accessories, and ammunition, Double Action is your only pro gun shop. And now you can train with the best in our basic CCW course with the most comprehensive curriculum, the best resources, and most accomplished staff. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Double Action is the only place to get your CCW or renewal. Double Action. We're on DeQuinder and Madison Heights.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Welcome back. All right, we're working through Nick and Sarah's issues with ABC Tool and looking at their options. Quick announcements. Seminars coming up, 2014 Year for Financial Success. You want to sign up for a seminar, go to our websites, thavgross.com, financialcrisistalkcenter.com. We've got seminars October 23 and 24 in October. In November, we've got them November 12 and 13. And also we have a Saturday seminar on the 16th, 11 to 12:30. It's a good opportunity to learn all sorts of options on financial issues. The focus isn't only on debt elimination. The focus is on leveraging your future so that you take advantage of what's out there to put money away for retirement rather than wasting it at 20% interest on credit card debt. I want to thank our sponsors, Van Johnson Law, Gold Star Law, Samasco Law, Double Action Shooting Range, Spine Specialists of Michigan, upcoming sponsors, Cardiology Associates of Michigan, and Elite REO Real Estate Services, Alan Stalter. All right, now back to where we're at. Jenny, on these payroll taxes. All right, so I go to, David said, what do I go and argue to the bank? My argument to the bank is, listen, work with us. Maybe you'll get your whole $1.6 million. Close us down. You're guaranteed of getting less than $800,000. I go to IRS in the state. I'm saying, listen, you're behind Big Bank. They're owed $1.6 million. You get nada. You get nothing if you close us down. Why don't you just work with us?
Well, and that's definitely going to be an argument. But the one thing I want to point out is that you don't get to deal with Big Bank first. Because what happens is a lot of times individuals try to compartmentalize. They're going to deal with Big Bank, then they're going to deal with the IRS. If you do it that way, IRS, the state of Michigan, might swoop in, levy your bank accounts, your accounts receivables, and then you're not going to be current with Big Bank either. So you really have to come up with a plan to deal with them all at once.
Yeah,
now,
no question. I agree with you there.
Here, when we would go into with the Internal Revenue Service, the Michigan Department of Treasury, the first thing they're going to say is, well, are you filing your current returns and are making your current deposits? Because if you're not making your current deposits, even if they don't want to do the work to shut you down because they're not going to see a dime in this, they have to, because they can't allow you to continue to, in a sense.
We have facts unknown. I haven't told you whether Nick is making his current deposits or not. All I've given you is the liability, $250 federal, $125 state. Are you ready for the fact?
Is it going to be in the norm?
If Nick says I have missed my last two deposits, what are you going to tell him?
Usually at that point I say, all right, now that you've retained me, what we're going to do here is you're going to make your next tax deposit. Sometimes we're going to make it through the revenue officer, through the warrant officer, whoever is assigned to the case. We're going to say, what we're going to say is you didn't know what to do, you didn't know who to pay first, you came to me, now you understand that you have to make your current tax deposit.
And let's make a point on this, because quite often we say, well, the banks, the big bad banks, and the IRS and the state of Michigan, yeah, they're tough a lot of the times. But when you're dealing with the revenue officer, you have to, any negotiator needs to look through the eyes of their opponent. And a revenue officer, every single revenue officer must account to their manager or their supervisor. And if they have a taxpayer that is continuing not to pay their payroll taxes, they are not going to be able to justify to their manager why they let that continue. So we must develop an explanation to it so for them to proceed, and then, as Jenny says, a plan to be current. If you don't have that plan, you're not going to get anywhere.
Not only the plan, but in this case, you have to do it. You have to execute the plan. You have to be current. Otherwise, in their mind, you're the habitual offender. and the problem is, and the liability is growing and getting worse. If you're coming in there saying, just like you said, Jenny, I was insane. He didn't know what he was doing. He was confused. He was scared. He was panicked. He was paying the wrong people. He was paying MasterCard rather than paying his payroll taxes. We've straightened him out. He's making his payments. What the revenue officer will want is the computer receipt showing each deposit's made timely. You don't get any grace in that period. You have to be able to make those payments.
I'll give you a perfect example. We had a client in the restaurant business who their deck during the summertime just gave them a huge amount of business, but it was in ill repair, and they spent a chunk of money to repair that asset. That kept them short for their taxes during a certain period of time, but now they have that. It generates income, and the argument to the taxing authorities at that time is they've streamlined their business so they can make those payments. So every single scenario is fact-based.
All right, now I want to go to another one. What about in this case? So installment agreements are one option to pay them over time with the penalty and interest. Is there an offer and compromise possibility that could be pursued for ABC Tool and Die here?
There is with respect to the Internal Revenue Service. The Internal Revenue Service will, if you're showing compliance and they're willing to work with you, they'll do an installment agreement. For some businesses, they'll do a hardship case, where as long as you stay current, they will not collect against the business. And then there's also the offer and compromise possibility, which basically, if you can show you can keep your head above water and pay your current bills, but you really don't have much left over at the end of the day, it's possible that based on the math formula, it's not a negotiation, it really is a math formula, that we could come up with a situation in which you could compromise the debt for significantly less.
See, like in this case,
I was just say, when you're dealing with that offer and compromise issue, does the IRS look at the fact that you have a state of Michigan obligation and say it's at the same level of importance as the IRS, or does the IRS poo-poo it and go, you know what, we don't care about the state, we're the IRS?
There's a formula for that. So it's going to depend who is assessed first, and then there's also a percentage of the debt. So there's new provisions that will make a formula as to whether or not they will allow those state payments.
See, in this case on the business, the asset value of the business makes it clear that there's nothing to be realized by the state or the feds if they're liquidated because of Big Bank's lien. That sets the stage for the possibility that you could do an offer and compromise. You have to then fit it. You have to fit the puzzle together.
There's a lot of arguments out there that it just depends. For example, you may have a client that is providing essential services in an impoverished neighborhood that childcare is not going to happen unless they're in business. You may have a client that employs 100 families.
We're making widgets here.
100 families that are employed, and you're current, and they're going to go and now put all of those families on assistance, or a good portion of them on assistance to drain the system when the taxes are getting paid. So it all depends what's going on.
You got to make the arguments. And by the way, ABC makes magic widgets, so these are special widgets. So they're very rare.
Do they ever make Windows?
No Windows.
Okay.
But the issue is the Michigan Department of Treasury, they're more limited because of their policies. They don't have an offer and compromise program yet. They really will not do a hardship for a business, and their installment agreements internally, they will not allow them to go out more than 5 years for an ongoing business.
We got to wind down this segment. We're going to come up to segment 3. We're going to look at what should Nick and Sarah do given the analysis that we've had. You're listening to the Financial Crisis Talk Center. We'll be back with segment 3 on the Nick and Sarah case.